Alright, folks. So I have decided to create a series of short videos about my time in the mountains and my jobs in the mountains. And the first of these jobs was working for Pursuit, which is a company that is predominantly here in Canada, in Banff and Jasper, and specializes mostly in hotels and tourist attractions. So what I was doing for Pursuit was that I was working as a bus driver, but also working as a tour guide, giving tours while I was driving. In February of 2021, I received the contract to work as a bus driver for Pursuit. The job was located in the Columbia Icefields, which is located an hour south of the town of Jasper and 2 hours from Banff. But before moving to the Columbia Icefields, Pursuit had me go and get my Class 2 license with their company Brewster, so that I was legally able to drive a bus. The bus I was driving was a motor coach, a bunch of very old motor coaches. Anyway, the bus driver training took about 4 weeks. It required a lot of classroom training for MELT, which at the time was required. It no longer is, but you can still read it, and I recommend doing so for anyone who wants to become a professional bus driver. I also received in-person training on pre-tripping a bus, doing your air brakes tests, and being behind the wheel driving a bus. It was a really good contract. It cost about $6,000 to get a bus driving license, but the company fully paid for it, and all you had to do was work until the end of the contract, which went on from March to October, which you were incentivized to do anyway, because if you completed the contract, you'd get a bonus at the end of it. They also had me trained to become a tour guide. All this training took about a couple months, from March to early May. So the contract was pretty good. I got a free bus driver's license and professional driving experience. I wanted to become a professional driver for a couple of years before getting that contract, and it was just the perfect thing. I also got to live in a national park. The Columbia Icefields is located at the border, the southernmost border of Jasper National Park. I also, as I said, got a bonus at the end of my contract, and I also got an increase in pay, or at least what was at the time an increase in pay. It wasn't a very high-paying job for a bus driver, but compared to my previous jobs, it paid a little bit more. So the job is pretty simple. Starting in May, you would bus guests around between the Discovery Center, the pickup spot for the Ice Explorers, and the Skywalk. The distance between all of these things was about 6 kilometers. You would also clean your buses, and you'd also clean your bus and do general maintenance, such as the fueling and refueling of the fluids in the buses. As I said, you would also give a tour of the guests while you're driving. If you're driving the Ice Explorers, you do most of this as well, except you'd receive specialized training for driving them. Another part of my job was driving the J10 bus. They were little Class 4 cutaway buses that you would drive from the Icefield to either Jasper, Hinton, or Banff to do some chores for the company, which could have meant moving people around or supplies, or taking laundry from the hotel that they would have in the Icefields to the cleaners. But how were things managed? It was just okay, I guess. The management at the Icefield was often pretty questionable. The main issue I found was just the buses. Most of the buses were pretty old. They were these blue pre-Volt buses from 1997 to 2000. Most buses nowadays are, the oldest buses you'll find in most cases are usually from the 2000s. Well, I had one bus from the 2000s after the fact, and most of the other ones were from the 2010s, so they're usually not more than 10 years old. Uh, the buses were actually around my age, but they were maintained pretty poorly. We were about 100 kilometers from any mechanic shop, except for the on-site mechanic's workplace, which looked like a tent. And Pursuit didn't put much money into maintaining these buses because, they were only driven 90 or 100 kilometers a day within a 6-kilometer radius. There were also a lot of complaints from people about how much they had to work, which was usually pretty high in July and August. It could be upwards of 50 hours a week, it being a busy season and whatnot. A lot of people thought that the management did a poor job, to the point where there was a ton of turnover, and most of the staff members chose not to return after 2021, which is the year I was working. To me, the worst part of the job was simply having to talk all day while I was giving tours, and that part of the job would last up to 8 hours a day, but word of mouth suggested that people had bigger issues with the management than that, which I'm not going to get into because they are, to the best of my knowledge, just rumors. So, let's talk about the area we were living in. The area we were living in was pretty remote. Jasper was the nearest town. It was about an hour away, or about 110 kilometers. We lived in a fairly large building in which you were given a room that had a couple of beds. So this is the room, this is a couple of beds. Room, couple of beds, which connected to another room. So it's basically four people to a bathroom. These two things are bedrooms, this is a bathroom. If you could imagine that. So the bathrooms were connected to two rooms, and you had a shared bathroom, so it was 4 people to a bathroom. We were also given free meals a day at the Icefield. The meals were pretty good, but I've heard bad things about the previous years. The years before 2021. Anyway, that mostly summarizes the bus driving job. The company also had you working in different departments, but that was usually what you were doing. You're usually just driving a bus, because the company paid $6,000 for you to get a bus driving license. Another thing I did. So, to fill in some time that the Columbia Icefield operation was closed, Pursuit had me working at the Banff Gondola as a lift attendant. You load guests onto the gondola, and then you push the cabin into the mechanism thing. So, what ended up happening was there was kind of a manual section and the gondola itself. The manual section was where you'd load and unload guests, and you would have to push the gondola around all day. The cabins were pretty heavy, and this was usually done for 8 hours a day, making for a very long and tiring, just repetitive job. On the bright side, you did often go out onto the mountaintop to shovel snow, which usually gave you a fair bit of time to enjoy the view at work. Speaking of bright sides, Pursuit would grant free access to all the attractions in the area for the staff members, so let's talk about their attractions. The Banff Gondola is located on Sulphur Mountain, and the gondola costs about $66, but you can hike up Sulphur Mountain, for free if you want. Regardless, the view is very beautiful. The boardwalk hike is really great, and the structure really allows for some great photos. That's a pretty good attraction. At the Columbia Icefield, the attractions are the Ice Explorer ride and the Skywalk. The Ice Explorer ride comes with a short tour and a ride to the Skywalk, and on the glacier you can get your picture taken and admire the view. It fares better than the Skywalk, which is an attraction that has received complaints online because, well, you can see the view that it has to offer from the road. Part of the view it has to offer from the road. You can see the view of the mountains from the road, but you can look down at the mountain goats as well. But you would usually get better views of the mountains from the skywalk area anyway, and you get to see a bunch of information panels, and being on the glass area of the skywalk is pretty cool as well. In terms of pricing and other features, there's a bunch of Parks Canada stuff in the basement of the shoot, lost my train of thought. The Discovery Center. There's usually a bunch of Parks Canada stuff located at the Columbia Icefield Discovery Center for free. Pursuit sells food and merchandise, but that's pretty expensive. The Columbia Icefield attraction as a whole has been panned for being one of the most disappointing attractions in Canada, and that's mainly because if you exclude the hiking in the area, you can do everything that in the Columbia Icefield area. It's because you can do everything that the area has to offer in about 3 hours if you exclude the hiking, and it costs about $100 to do the attractions. Pursuit also has their Skybridge attraction located in Golden. I remember the Skybridge and the zipline attractions being pretty good, but I've never been on the other attractions because I went there before they were constructed. So, oddly enough, Pursuit's worst attraction is the one they keep constructing, and I don't know why. So, and it is none other than Fly Over Canada. Fly Over Canada, for those of you who don't know, is Pursuit's movie attraction. They have these little movie theaters and they basically strap you into this motion simulator kind of thing, and it sprays mist and wind. So, what makes the flyover attraction? And these things are currently being constructed in Toronto and I think Chicago. So, what makes this location that is located in Canada, the US, and Iceland, what makes it the worst? It's the fact that they charge you $30 to see a 10-minute movie. I mean, like I said, it has special effects like wind blowing and mist spraying, but you can ultimately just look at the movies on YouTube, get one of those spray fan things for the effects, use your imagination, and do it for free. And it is mostly just a glorified advertisement for the natural beauty in the area that the movie is for. They've got 2 other boat tour attractions in the area, which are fairly expensive, but they do offer nice views of the mountains. I remember the tours not being that good, and they've got some, you can rent equipment from some of their other attractions for recreational purposes, and they do offer some bus tours, which I've never been on. And that's most of the attractions they have to offer. So, to summarize, Banff Gondola is pretty good. The Skybridge is pretty good. The Columbia Icefield attractions, they're not bad, they're okay. But Flyover Canada absolutely sucks. Absolutely awful attraction. Don't go visiting it. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the next job I had, which was working at the Lake Louise Ski Resort. I hope to see you all then. You have a good day, folks.